Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Exploring 3D Experience Works, where we cover top to bottom the 3D Experience Works portfolio. My name is John Martorano, and with me today is Gian Calisi. Together, again, we host this show, and one of the main questions you might have, especially if you're new, is what exactly is 3D Experience Works? So, what is this thing that you're about to explore live with us? It's our growing portfolio of tools that are handpicked by Solidworks to solve just about any challenge you face in product development. So this that you see on screen is 3D Experience Works. So what does that product development process really look like? It's pretty simple. It's planning, developing, and releasing a product. So we all know that SolidWorks really tackles that second step with developing and iterating on your design. But the rest of 3D Experience Works actually really nicely fills those gaps to provide a one-stop shop of connected solutions. So if you joined us all this year, then you know that that's what we're all about here. And we've been all over the map, and today is actually no exception because we're going to be focusing on one of these processes that we don't typically focus on, and with a whole new
Okay.
product to introduce. So, what are we going to be
Thanks,
covering
John.
today,
Yeah,
Gian?
so today we're going to be focusing on that release phase of the product development process. So the point where your design is done, you've created your CAD data, and we're going to use some of the tools in DELMIA Works, another one of our brands that's going to help us bring that to production and kind of manage everything from the production side of things when it comes to getting your designs out there in the market. So bridging the gap from design engineering, mechanical engineering to manufacturing and production. So to help us go through this bear of a topic today, we have Earl Hasz and Dick Longoria to join us. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey,
Very good.
fantastic,
So you
Gian.
guys
Happy to
both
be
have
here.
a pretty strong background in manufacturing production side of things. Would you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So I've been with Dassault System now for 20 plus years, and over the course of the time, I've seen SolidWorks grow up around that. But over the past 3 or 4 years, I've started working with the DELMIA Works team and helping to bring that to our SolidWorks partners and to our customers.
Awesome. And Dick, you have a similar
Great.
background too. You've been with us for quite a long time, right?
Oh, a long time, Gian. I've been around SolidWorks since it was first released back in November of '95, and experience before there. So I've had the opportunity to see the 2D to 3D transition, and now we're watching that next phase of evolution with real-time information. The Internet of Things. So a lot of cool technology that we're all getting a chance to experience and witness.
Great. So today, I know that we're kind of thinking about things from the production side of things, pivoting from some of our previous sessions where we focus more on SolidWorks, SolidWorks products, and the design process. So today, we're focusing more on the shift to a manufacturing engineer, a production engineer, kind of picking up on that. Earl, could you tell us a little bit about what are the next steps, at a high level from, your CAD design is done to now you want to get everything out on the market?
Right, right. So, of course, as an engineer, designer, you're designing the products, but at some point you have to fabricate that and ship it off to the customer. And so that's where today we're going to look at how we can go from the design side of things into the platform through to production, and how all of we go from engineering to production and planning and actually shipping product off to customers today.
Awesome. So I think that we did a survey kind of recently, right? Kind of figuring out where different businesses are in transforming digitally, right?
Yeah, earlier this year, Dassault System and Industry Week worked together to create a survey for manufacturers. And of the folks that responded, most of those folks were uh, at operations that were inside of a $50 million operations businesses. And most of those people were talking about how they were looking to go through a digital transformation. And over the course of the past couple of years, it's really accentuated the notion of going from something that's purely on-site to something that's more of a transformation into a digital environment. And most of what they were looking for is content that gives them access and to their information on the shop floor. So what kind of production is going on? What kind of cycle times do they have? What's their yield? What's their inventory levels? All this information that's out on the shop floor, they need to be able to capture that back to be able to analyze that. And when they were looking at that, they saw that 70% of the respondents indicated that they either have a current plan or plan to have a technology platform that integrates all these tools together. So it's not just one tool to manage inventory, one tool to manage scheduling, and another for customers. Let's bring it all together into a single solution. And so that gives us a notion about what is the factory of the future. We see that there are 5 key pillars to that factory of the future. What is operational visibility, real-time analytics, model-based manufacturing, connected enterprise, and value network optimization. So how do we bring each of those together in the overall solution? And so DELMIA Works and Solidworks and 3DEXPERIENCE all play factors into this factory of the future. DELMIA Works gives us the tools for insight onto the shop floor. We can see what kind of real-time data is out there to be able to analyze that information. The 3DEXPERIENCE platforms brings together our CAD tools and our manufacturing tools of SolidWorks and DELMIA Works to enable us to work together. And then there are other tools within 3DEXPERIENCE that allows us to go into programming our machines, managing our business, as well as even go down the path of predictive maintenance and other optimizations. So what we're going to look at today is something I like to look at in the form of the 3DEXPERIENCE Works platform, or really our manufacturing business operating system that pulls together all the different applications that you need and provides a single location for content. So in the case of governance, we're looking at tools that allow us to interact with the data and analyze that data, maybe work with our customers. The design side, we take our CAD data and create those designs and bring them onto the platform, which then allows us to go into simulation. We won't go into simulation today, but that certainly is an area that's available to us. In production, once that content's available to us, we'll see how we can create our production schedule. We can figure out how our inventory is managed throughout our business. Today, we won't go into manufacturing or marketing and sales, but equally there are tools available to us in all those areas. And so this operating system is an area that really gives us access to all the content in one central location.
And you're actually in that operating system right now. You're looking at this on the cloud-based 3DEXPERIENCE platform, right? Right in the browser.
It's great. I am right at the moment. I'm right here. I've got the browser expanded on it, but it's exactly the case. Is to start off with, I'm here in our collaborative tool, 3D Swim, where I can set up communities for stakeholders in a given project, whether those stakeholders are internal or if the stakeholders are also our customer. So we can collaborate with our customer and really give them a key understanding about what's going on in their operation. And it provides a clear history of what has occurred within the environment.
I see some really cool models of that prosthetic in there. Do you have that open in SolidWorks?
I do. So I've got this this artificial leg in SolidWorks. allows. So of course, with SolidWorks, it's the same SolidWorks we know and love over the course of the past 20 plus years, right? 25 years. And here is the case where the engineer can go through and interact with the model, do everything else, create all the designs, create the structure that they need. But what we have on the right here is the collaborative designer for SolidWorks, which allows us to manage the revisions of that model as it goes through the design cycles. So you have access to that, whether it be regardless of the model.
So that right-hand panel, that's your gateway to the 3DEXPERIENCE platform right in the SolidWorks interface, right?
Exactly. It's giving us information about what the state is of all the components throughout their cycle. What kind of revisions am I in? If I've reserved that model to start making changes to it, when I unreserve it, I can put it back out there. If I want to create new revisions, a new variation of that model, this is where I have the tools that gives me the ability as the engineer to keep track of where I am with the design cycle. And it's all being stored upon the 3DEXPERIENCE platform.
Right. Awesome. So you got a lot going on in this model. I think there was another model we were looking at before too, right? There's another one that we might take a look at.
Yeah. This
Awesome.
motorcycle. This
Yeah.
one's a lot of fun. I mean, what's not fun about a motorcycle, right? This one's an interesting one in that the designer has chosen to keep it to be a fairly flat assembly tree, and we'll see how that plays out as we move forward. But perhaps the engineer decided that he needed to be able to do some motion analysis, maybe as other simulations that were best suited in this context, or he simply just threw it all together as in a single level assembly tree. So we'll see how that plays out over the course of the
Right.
day.
So what is it like, kind of seeing this on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform now as we start to transition to like what a manufacturing engineer might do with this data?
Right. So again, back on the platform here, again, I've saved content over onto the swim community. I can capture that information. As a non-engineer, I can interact with the model. I have access to the whole tree and all the data that's associated with it. So that information is available to me because the collaborative designer is saving that the revisions up to the platform. And so if I go over if I switch hats now over to production as a production engineer or manufacturing engineer, now I can look at this same model in manufacturing items management. Now this guy gives me the tools to interact with this motorcycle, and I see the same assembly tree in the context of manufacturing items management. But as a manufacturer, I'm not necessarily going to lay out all of the parts on my workbench and start assembling this motorcycle. I'm clearly going to make different sub-assemblies before I assemble the next process of the motorcycle. And so what manufacturing items management does is it allows me to do just that. So in this case, I have created a subassembly of the front end of this motorcycle. So I'm starting to build up the different sections. So maybe I assemble the front brake calipers, assemble the spindle, assemble the front wheel assembly at different operations during the course of fabrication before I have that full front end assembly in place. Once I have that, then I could look to build up the rear end, maybe the exhaust, whatever it makes sense.
And so could you speak a little bit more about kind of how like a designer or an engineer might design something one way, and have like a tree, they design their tree one way, whereas it has to be different for the manufacturing bill of materials versus the engineering one, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what I have here is the engineer has built up this assembly, and without necessarily worrying about what the manufacturing process is. That gives them the freedom of actually doing the design, the analysis that they need to. And on the manufacturing side now, I have the ability to decide. And once I'm on the manufacturing side, now I can go ahead and start to develop what's uh, in that assembly. And so, in the case of this front wheel, then I've got a handful of components that are represent that particular section. Now, as a manufacturing process, maybe I also need to add in paint, or I need to add in oil or lubricants or other operations. Maybe there's packaging that's involved. Those kinds of things I can add in to this manufacturing bill of materials that's not relevant to the design of that motorcycle.
Understood. Understood. Okay. So sounds like we brought our data, our CAD data up to the 3D Experience platform. We brought it into the cloud, and now as a manufacturing engineer, you can kind of separate it out, create the manufacturing BOM from your engineering BOM. What would you say is probably the next step here, Earl?
Yeah, actually, before we go down that path, one area that's kind of cool about what we're seeing here, we actually have these uh, BI data analytics that are coming up for me as the manufacturing engineer. I can identify where I am in the process. So thus far, any of these gray items, there's actually an associated component in the manufacturing BOM. But all these orange ones indicate that I have yet to set up a link back to the NBOM. And so this gives me a cue as the engineer the manufacturing engineer to know what I've done and what I haven't done, and what work I still have left to do for my setup. So this gives me some visual cues, and if the revision of the engineering side, the design side changes, I'll know that that's out of date when my green changes to other colors. So I get some feedback as to what's going on, and I know where I am in the process.
Right.
So.
And that would be real time, Earl. Like if I was
Cool.
the engineer and I made a new revision, you would see that.
Yeah,
I see.
correct. Correct. The system will give me that because it's all data. These items reside within the 3D Experience platform. That's
All
right.
right. So
So yeah. So you started to say what's
yeah,
what's
getting a
the
little
next
ahead of
step?
myself,
And,
but yeah.
so you got a little ahead of yourself there. That's all good. So hey, I'm going to come back to this calf, the calf, just a subassembly of that leg, and to give you a different example, we'll track how that goes into production at this point, just for a little simplification. But so I've got again another flat assembly. Maybe I assemble one side at one work center. I'll assemble the other side at another work center, and then at a third work center, I'll assemble all three of them to the whole setup to create the final calf. And so in manufacturing items management, I've done just that. I've created one subassembly. I've created another subassembly that represents that information. So now I can start to plan against that process and develop its actual manufacturing steps. So manufacturing items management gives me the tools to push that along over to DELMIA Works, where now that I'm in DELMIA Works, I can go in and start to define that model. And so what I've got on the screen here now is that top level assembly of this calf, and it now is in the context of DELMIA Works, where in this case I can see how many units I have on hand. It looks like I've got 140 on hand. It looks like they are actually in transit from wherever they're coming from. I can set up information on lot management. I have information throughout our system on what's going on. And we'll see how we have access to understanding what the costing is of this items. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I can set up the manufacturing process. If I jump over to that manufacturing item, this is where I'm now changing over from specific items and components to now the operations. How do I go about assembling this? And so I can define how much time do I expect to assemble the top that top final assembly. In this case, I've got 2 minutes. Maybe my workbench takes 15 minutes to set up, so I've got a setup time associated with it. One person in labor set up for that, and that gives me some information on how long it's going to be to go through. How many cycles in an hour can I go through? Again, this is based on information that the historical information that one would know. And now that I have that, I can see what components I had. It's the same tree, but in the context of DELMIA Works. Now I have the opportunity to see exactly not just the components that go into the fabrication of that assembly, but also the different operations. So this operation is assembling the right side of that calf, and it takes these components. The left side takes these components, and the calf itself takes those two sub-assemblies plus the additional hardware, additional components to create that final assembly. So I'm starting to see exactly that process, and each of those blue sections represents something that I can create a work order against and put into my production schedule.
So are those the main two items that you deal with here, Earl, is like the blue boxes that are your work orders to have something assembled, and then the green ones are all components that are already created or like purchased components for the most part?
Yeah, in this case, they would be purchase components. Those components could be packaging. It could be maybe it's a tray that they're coming in. But to be sure, if I look at the left side panel of that leg there, naturally that's going to go through a number of different operations. It's going to go from a sheet stock, maybe a laser cut, maybe it's you go through a bending operation, some milling, anodization, some final etching, those kinds of things. You'll go through these operations, and so that left panel may actually have a number of blue panels by the time I go through the actual process of developing this. But what that does is it gives me the opportunity to put into schedule each of those operations and know when they're going to be completed.
I see. So this is where you can define those and understand, how it's going to go. On the right side, though, I see it looks like some real-time data about, is that your factory or your work centers?
So now DELMIA Works is giving us access to what's going on in the shop floor, what's going on throughout the plant. I have access to that, and so as the production engineer, I can define what do I see, what do I care about in my dashboard, in my business information dashboard. And in this case, I can get an idea about what is the current performance of each of the work centers that I'm operating on. And that gives me an idea about when I go through and develop what work centers and what work cells am I putting this plan against. I can define where it's going to be going against. I can get information about what kind of rejects are occurring, and equally have direct access to my efficiencies across my plant.
And Earl, those overall equipment efficiency numbers are pretty critical to a manufacturing organization. In fact, manufacturing studies show that when companies do not measure their machine availability, quality, and performance, that their overall manufacturing capacity is about 40%. And once they start measuring these critical metrics, they can increase that number by upwards of to 60 or 70% within 3 months to 6 months of time. So literally, just by gathering this information, manufacturers can increase manufacturing capacity to nearly double using the same equipment and resources.
Yeah. So I guess I'm somewhere in between that 40 to 60, 70% at this point. I have to work on that. But I mean, I've got a lot of different work centers out here. A lot of them, you can see, a lot of it's down, and so that's probably bringing my information down. But you're right. We have access to that information. We're going to be capturing that information when we get into scheduling and production here shortly.
Yeah, so that's crazy to hear that it can really double your capacity just by monitoring. But I guess it just goes to show knowledge. Yeah,
Very
knowledge
quickly, too.
knowledge is power, right? The more you know.
Yeah, the more you know.
So, Earl,
Great.
you think that we're ready to maybe take a look at it from a production planning standpoint, or do you want to cover anything else as the production engineer?
Yeah, no, that's fine. The production engineer, he's developing and that defining. Actually, let me go back to that. That's a good. He's not only defining what the process is for assembling that, but he's also able to define what equipment's needed at the work center, whether it be wrenches or air guns or any kind of tools that are needed. Maybe it's a grinder or a heating box or an oven, whatever is required at that for that site. I can add that information to the center so that when I do the setup, I know exactly what's needed at that site. So I have all that information. I'm capturing that information so that now that I have those configurations, that manufacturing configuration, I can start to develop my my schedule against that. And that's where I can go into production planning. Here I've got a listing of all of the different work centers that are currently in production out on my shop floor. We can see what work orders, where they are in the operation. I can define what to add or move for work orders around in the shop. I can see, again, I've got my dashboard available to me. This time gives me the opportunity to see which work centers are operating nominally, which work centers are working fast, which ones are down. I have direct access to information on what's actually going on the shop floor. So as I set up my plan, I can identify what work orders I need to manage to get into my schedule.
Wow. Yeah, this must be very helpful for planning that all of your production needs. I'm wondering, what is this the place where you would kind of start to take into account things like um, your supply chain, like the impact of price changes of different goods or different products that you might be purchasing along the way? Is this kind of where you would see some of that?
Yeah. So as I'm developing my schedule, so I can go and update, regenerate my schedule. I can have that schedule be regenerated periodically, just by and have that the MRP engine running. But when I do that, I have access to material exceptions list or in information that's going on with respect to what materials I need for production. Okay, and so when I look at the material exception list, I actually have I can look at that particular material. In this case, it's polyurethane. It just raw resin for my injection molding machines. So in that particular case, I can look at that and say, I know I have on hand 49,000 pounds of this resin, but I need an additional 4,400, and I need it to arrive by. Well, looks like I need it to arrive by yesterday, so it's late to be sure. but this is giving me an idea about what work orders are actually affected by this material exception. So I can see those work orders. I actually see which they actually indicate what purchase orders, what our customers are affected by this. So I can make choices on that particular item. So if I go to if I need to add it to a purchase order, I can go and look at. I can see which vendors are supplying me that resin, so I can make a choice on which one I need. Given that I'm late, maybe I choose one over the other based on my knowledge about those two vendors. One may be able to get me product tomorrow. The other one's going to be able to get it to me by the beginning of next week. So depending on what my needs are, I can make that choice. And of course, that affects what the cost of that material is at that point.
And Earl, Gian brings up an excellent point. There's been certainly been supply chain challenges, and we recently visited a customer who talked about multiple price increases just within the last few months. Would any quotes or that might be outstanding to customers, would those reflect any kind of price changes as well?
Yeah, so let's consider that this is the same polyurethane that we had earlier, and at the moment I've got the cost that I have last purchased that material at. But if I go in and calculate the cost, I can actually identify what the future cost is going to be. Not only that, but if I've received new materials, new price values, I can actually go through and recalculate against all of the different products that material is affected, that material is used in, whether it be resin in this case or sheet stock for my calf example, whatever that happens to be, I can recalculate, and it will then apply an update against my data, so I can roll that cost up into all of the items, and it then puts that in and updates the cost against that information. So when I get to the new version, now it gets applied to all of those other products. So we can capture that directly. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I think that sounds like that pretty much covers the production planning side of things. Would you say, Earl?
It does, yeah. So I've created my production plan, and of course I've got my production in place, my production plan. All that's left is sorting out what my demand is, right? How do I know what work orders I need?
Yeah, so I guess this is probably a good time to maybe shift to the role of somebody in sales or customer service, actually having those conversations with people that want to order your product and putting those into the DELMIA Works database to generate that demand, right?
Correct. So let's have a look at the front office. So here I've got Amy in customer service here. She's doing all of our communication with our customers, and naturally she has a separate interface with DELMIA Works for her own information. In this case, now it gives her an idea about which customers have orders that are open, which orders are overdue, so that when Abco calls up, she can get her fingers on exactly what's going on ahead of time, perhaps, so at least they have an idea about what's on the horizon. But in this case, for this particular sales order, Abco has purchased or has put onto their purchase order a number of different items. Maybe they're calling up to say, I'd like to order 1,000 of these legs. And so when we add them to the list, we can actually go in and look to see what is the current availability of that leg. So we can see exactly how many we have. We see where they are. We we could see when we would have those available. But if the customer is asking for a certain amount at a certain time, so let's say they want 1,000 of those to arrive by the end of next week, I can go in and ask the system, can I deliver 1,000 units by the end of next week? And the system's coming back and telling me, no, you can't do it then. You can promise a delivery date of 1,000 units by the 23rd. And what it's doing is it's giving me that same that same routing tree that we saw on the production side. But this time it's giving me flags to indicate what's the issue. Clearly, I have a complete supply chain issue at the moment where I don't have any of these items on hand. That's what those little flags are saying, and that I need that in order to be able to produce the next steps up. What this calculation has done is actually looking at ordering the product, having it come on hand, shipping, scheduling each of those products, and then shipping it out the door to get it onto the customer's receiving dock. So this is giving me that full process from start to finish in just this amount of time.
Earl, and this is an excellent example of the value of real-time information because, like you just reviewed, in order to go through a potential order for a customer and whether or not you can promise delivery, you have to know what do you have in inventory, what the raw materials are that are required, what your schedule is, and what your manufacturing capacity is on any given point in time out on the manufacturing floor. And unless you're getting real-time information from the floor, you would have no ability to accurately predict a delivery date for these customers. So this is an excellent example of the value of that type of capability, and it's a significant competitive advantage for companies who have these types of technologies in place.
Yeah, failing that information, you really just have to go by gut feel, right? Or have a standard lead time of 3 weeks. Just say we're going to give you 3 weeks. I may be able to produce it in 1 week, but I'll guarantee it by that 3rd week. So this at least gives us a better indication about what that window really is.
Yeah, and like you were saying before, Dick, having this in real time, that just helps you as a salesperson or in customer service. Now you can have this conversation, you can have this live while you're checking and say, oh, okay, maybe not by October 6th, but maybe by, what does it give you here, Earl? Is it later in October?
Yeah,
23rd.
October 23rd. So that's giving me for 1,000 units. I could go back. Let me go back to that sales order, and DELMIA Works gives us the opportunity to not just deliver all 1,000 units at once, but perhaps we want to do it in releases. So I can give you 100 next week, and 100 the following week, and 100 the following week after that. And so it can that will generate now, instead of one big work order of 1,000, now I can create multiple 100 unit work orders that are easily more manageable for production. So this is where that production work order starts to come into play.
Well, that sure beats the option of having to run out into the warehouse on the shelf, doesn't it?
It does. Amy doesn't have to say, "Wait, let me get back to you in an hour to find out if I can deliver it and see what production's all about." So, right, she has direct access to this information.
Right. So I think that just about covers kind of the order management side, right? Was there anything left to show here, Earl, on that side of things?
Yeah. Not from the sales order. I mean, we can go down a lot of different paths if we wanted to, from shipping to receiving and even finance management. What I did bring up here is what is the view of an operator on the shop floor, right? So we've been talking about digital content, digital transformation, and capturing data real time and so on. But how does that fit in at the shop floor, right? So the data's got to come from somewhere, and this is where Joan at the work center can indicate to us that she's made X number of these calves in a given production cycle. So she can go through and say, or click on open the floor disposition and indicate that she has made 100 units. And when she makes 100 units, the system will disposition all the incoming inventory items, whether it be raw material or otherwise, and turn that into, in the system, completed product. Now, if there was any items that were rejects, she can indicate exactly how many of those occurred as well. In this particular case, we're looking at a machine that's got a 10 to 12 cycle, 10 to 12 second cycle, and so every time that cycle occurs, a real-time processing unit will trigger that says, I've created another cycle, which has how X number of components that gets created. If we're talking injection molding, maybe I'm creating 5 or 6 parts at once. So I can figure out exactly how many components are being created at every cycle. So, and we can see exactly what's going on. Now, if it's an assembled unit, maybe it goes through a light counter, some kind of a counter that goes between work centers. But the idea is you have access to this information, and that information being captured at the work center goes straight up to all of these dashboards that we're seeing here, and the data gets pulled in directly real time. That's where we can start to gain access to that real time optimization.
Yeah, that real time information is so important. Sorry, Dick, I just cut you off. What were you going to say?
No worries. And Earl, this goes to a question that we received through the chat, where someone was asking about how we get that information, from the station or between processes in a station. And I think you partially answered it already. Either A, it could be manually input. It could also be read automatically if we have various, tools set up. And also speak to whether or not we need, what happens if a machine is is an older unit, maybe it's not connected to a PLC, maybe it is. Can you answer that?
Right. So we, so what happens is if we have something that's got a newer machine, it's got its own PLCs, whatever data that's available to us there, as far as cycles or otherwise, we can capture that. We can take that information in, connected via our real-time server, which will just simply be a listener for data from those PLCs. Now, if it's an older machine, or as I say, if we're assembling these calves, maybe there's a light trigger that as the operator puts it to the next work center, it triggers it, or pushing of a button. In any of those cases, then now we could set up some real-time hardware to go along with this that triggers that cycle count for us. So it's just a little bit of extra hardware that goes on at these work centers that captures this data live for us. So we can help with setting up that information for the system.
Awesome. I think that I just saw another question pop up that I think you might be able to answer, Earl. Does your travel or routing for the operator generated QR code for managing the feedback or information? And what kind of information can you provide to the operator?
Yeah, so on the at the work center, so this would be the operator's workstation as they're interacting with it. So if they go and look at the documents for that particular work center, it's actually going to give you the documents from related to the inventory, for example. So if there's if there's any inventory that's associated with it, if there is something related to the bill of manufacture, the work instructions, or if there is information about what's coming from the customer. So this AKA might have been data coming from the customer. So that's all information that's being pulled to us because we're working on this particular work order, and so that information is being stored either with the inventory item, with the configuration, or otherwise. And so that's effectively the traveler. Now, this lot information can be kept track of, so we know what the item is at any given time, and equally we have the opportunity to create labels that could be put onto the product if that's necessary, and then that label could have the information about what is the inventory item and where does it stand in its process. So there's a lot of different ways that we can manage this content. That's a good question there.
Gian, I think you're on mute.
Yep, always happens at least once, and for some reason it keeps being me. But
there you go.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like this system really helps bring the right information to the right people. You know, depending on who you are as an operator, you have all of these options. So it definitely seems very versatile and user specific, which is helpful to kind of all those different people that would get their hands on DELMIA Works.
Yeah, depending on your role, you'll have access. You would have an access into specific information. I mean, we've started off our this whole discussion with the role of the engineer, and what role they play in the production engineer, production planner, the shop floor operator, and as Amy interacts with the customer, she could be in the customer's community, and if there is like design changes or otherwise for that production, we can put that in, capture that information here. So we have a history of what transactions have occurred, what communications have occurred, and in a visual manner, in a collaborative social manner with the customer.
And Earl, I think that's another key point, is that historically the way that companies might keep track of this information is through emails, and emails get lost, or if you have to have a customer's approval, trying to find that email might be difficult or impossible. Here everybody has access and everybody has real-time information at their fingertips.
Correct. That brings us right back to that. At the end of the day, we're talking about 3DEXPERIENCE platform as an operating system, as the tool of our manufacturing business, right? So we have everything goes through the central system of 3DEXPERIENCE Works, and depending on what role you are, whether you're in production or design or simulation or otherwise, we have tools that give us access to the data that makes sense in our space. And if your company's not ready for one tool or another, then that's fair. But just like any application on your desktop, you can always add on that functionality, and now you have access to it and interact with those same files in the context of whatever tool it is. Which is why I say I believe this is your operating system for your business.
Yeah, it's that single source of truth that everyone can get a specialized tool that still all connects to. So just to give a quick recap of everything we just saw, and stop me and add anything if I miss it, Earl, but we started with the swim communities, kind of the central hub of collaboration in the 3DEXPERIENCE platform.
Correct.
And then we switched to the design engineer or mechanical engineer in SolidWorks creating that CAD data. And they finish it off by sending the CAD data with the engineering bill of materials to the manufacturing engineer that would then translate that into the manufacturing bill of materials. Okay. And
correct.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then once they have that manufacturing bill of materials, now we can start to actually create our production plan. We can create demand, define what inventory we need from our vendors, go through production, put it on the schedule, and get it shipped off to our
Right. And we're still
customers.
collecting all of that real-time information so we can give accurate lead times to people that want to purchase something from us. We can manage our supply chain and everything on the back end that we need to do. All that real-time information all in one place, it definitely makes an incredible difference in the way you can operate your business from a production side of things. Any final questions or thoughts or comments you guys want to add, Earl and Dick?
I checked the question log. I think we're all clear right now,
Awesome.
Gian.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been very, very enlightening. I don't think that I've seen such a high level view of what DELMIA Works really is so far, and I think that I really am starting to get a good understanding of this now. Um, so with that, John, you want to take us home?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Dick. Thanks, Earl, for joining us. That's all for today, and everybody in the chat. And thanks for participating. And hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in learning more about DELMIA Works, we do have a link in the description. As always, special shout out to Sarah Zuckerman for helping us communicate with you through the chat. She's in the back, behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly. And you're definitely going to want to check out our next session on October 14th, where we have Sashi Sithambram. He's going to be joining us. He's our simulation expert, and we're going to be covering some cloud-based simulation workflows. So you'll definitely want to check that out. Hope to see you then. And until then, have a great day, everybody.